Coming up on our Finding Better podcast, we're going to talk about how choosing to take ownership can change everything and make everything better. Brian Price is joining me to share his journey with you about how he learned to take ownership. And when he did, his bad relationships became extraordinary relationships. When he took ownership of himself and learned to lead himself, not just other people, changed everything. And it's all about choosing and it's all about ownership. Please share this. It could be a life changer. Here we go. Hello, 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 and welcome back to our Finding Better podcast. My name is John Suzuki, and I am your host. And this is where we talk about real lived experiences of people who have been there and done that. Because sometimes one of the best paths to success is to follow in the footsteps of others who have been where you want to go, right? And so we're going to talk, it's all about experiences. We have a Brian Price is my guest today. I am so thrilled to have him here. My introduction of Brian is a little bit long, but it's worth the listen, okay? Because there's a lot baked into this thing. All right. So Brian is an executive coach, he's an author, and he's a speaker. He's been a husband for 30 years. Congratulations. I just celebrated my 40-year anniversary. He's a father and a coach who helps men become extraordinary husbands by learning to lead themselves when it matters most. That's the first clue, folks. How to lead yourself. When we think about leadership, we think about leading others. Try leading yourself first. Okay, good. So a quote that I wanted to share with him. He says, quote, "We live in a time when humans are less connected now than in any other time in history. We're more digitally connected, but we lack human connection all around." How true is that? The cost of this disconnection is less relatability, less empathy, more conflict. And as a result, people don't know how to talk to each other anymore, right? They don't know how to relate to each other or create healthy human relationships with each other. Unquote. Okay, so one of the most defining chapters of his life came when his infant daughter was diagnosed with leukemia. While she made a full recovery, the experience reshaped his priorities and deepened his conviction that time, presence, and alignment with one's values matter more than titles or success. Mm. Through those challenges, Brian learned a truth that now anchors his work. Marriage is the ultimate proving ground for leadership. At home, titles don't matter. Performance doesn't matter. Only presence does. After years in sales, consulting, entrepreneurship, and nonprofit leadership, Brian left the corporate world to focus fully on his family, service to his community, and coaching. He's a certified coach of 12 years and the creator of the Extraordinary Husband Framework. And today he's writing his first book and works privately with men who love their wife, believe their marriage is worth fighting for, and are ready to lead themselves and their families with purpose, courage, and intention. How's that for a manifesto? All right, Brian is all about creating extraordinary relationships and marriages. The moment, now listen carefully to this, and this is the last thing I'm going to say. Well, not really, but the moment you choose ownership, everything shifts. Brian, welcome to Finding Better.
Thank you, John. That's awesome. What an awesome and humbling introduction. That was incredible.
It shouldn't be humbling because it's you, but anyway,
Well,
the thing is, you have so much wrapped in there. You talk about being so disconnected in the most connected world we've ever been in, right?
yeah.
So you're a life coach, and this podcast is about finding better. So, what are some examples of people who come to you, and how have you helped them find better?
Oh, man, that is an open-ended question that I could spend 2 days on. Well, look, let's start here. People are people are looking for not just connection, right? They're looking for a life where they have impact, where they are in joy, where they love what they do, they love the people they're around, where they're creating something bigger than themselves, but they get stopped by their own stuff. It's
by
difficult.
life.
Yeah. Well, it can be life. It could be all sorts of things. It could be the past experiences that continue to show up in their life. It could be that
Yeah.
boss
Tough.
who they thought
Yeah.
loved them to death yesterday, and then today, gives them the stink eye that you're messing up, right? And it leaves them with a lot of questions. And then when we get into the position of men and women, frankly, that are not
Hmm.
loving their relationship with their significant other, they get themselves wrapped around the wheel, the axle, so to speak, around why. And at the end of the day, I think it comes down to this. To answer your question a little more succinctly, people just want to live a life they love, and they don't know how. And I know it's a real general term, but look all around us. People are constantly in struggle around money, time, possession, work, career, family. Um, what did the neighbor? Why did the neighbor mow their lawn at 5 in the morning? The garbage man didn't take my garbage today. I mean, we get caught up in all these stupid little things, and I mean that very literally. And it's not stupid to that person in the moment.
Right.
It's real. It's palatable. It has energy. It takes on a life of its own. And people come and over the years that I've been coaching, and I didn't start out coaching relationships, by the way. I start out coaching like most coaches, just whatever it is you want to make better in your life or find better in your life. I'm there to help you with that, whatever that is. And so I worked with a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs at first. And I love that because I'm very entrepreneurial. And it was about a lot of problem solving. And as a coach, we don't problem solve, but it was about helping provide an outlet for that client to really discover who they were being, how they were showing up in the world, why that was stopping them and getting from getting where they wanted to be in their business or in their personal life or both. And one of the things I learned that was so profound in all of those first 4 or 5 years was they might come to you with this thing like, I want my business to be more profitable and I want to have a better relationship with my employees. But then when I would dive into their personal life just for context or find out what else is happening in their life, I would find out, oh yeah, they're having issues over here too. And oh, by the way, those issues are impacting everything that's happening over here. And it's
Right.
all very symbiotic. And what we are really good at as humans, and I'll wrap up my answer here, is that people love to compartmentalize themselves, their life in general. They
Hmm.
compartmentalize their problems, they compartmentalize their work. They figure, well, I'm this person at work, but I'm this person at home. And so when clients have come to me over the years, what I've learned is it's all symbiotic. And when they come to me, they might want this thing and they might want it fixed. But in the end, there are no fixes. This is the irony of coaching. We don't fix anything. We really just bubble things up to the surface and then act as a shiny mirror and say, here it is. Now, what are we going to do about it? And once it's exposed and awareness is created, that's when the work starts.
So what you just said is that people compartmentalize. They compartmentalize their personal life, their family life, their work life. They compartment and they come in to see you and they say, "I want you to help me on this compartment." But then what you do during the process, either intentionally or unintentionally, is you basically help them understand that they all work together, right? They're all related. I say this because just last night I watched a really, really great show. I think it was on Netflix or Amazon Prime. I don't remember which, but anyway, it was about Jerry West. And it's Jerry West, the logo. You know, on the NBA logo, they've got that basketball player, right? That's kind of leaning into the ball. That's Jerry West.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And
Okay.
yeah, that's Jerry West. And the man was one of the greatest basketball players of all time. At the end, Michael Jordan is interviewed and he says, "Yeah, man, I wish I could have played. I wish Jerry and I could have played together." He says, "I would have kicked his ass, but I think I think we would have learned a lot from each other." But no, but Jerry West was an amazing, amazing, an absolute legend. But the first his first marriage collapsed. His first marriage with three kids collapsed. And he was only focused on basketball. And he had a very, very turbulent uh, uh, childhood with his father. And as you were talking about it, I just because it's so recent in my head, I just watched it last night. I'm thinking to myself, gee, I wonder if Brian could help Jerry West, right? Take the basketball and because he absolutely compartmentalized a lot of his life, right? And really super many giants of industry and sports do that a lot. And
Yeah.
you know, and so let's talk about where about you. Let's talk about you for a second. You were in sales, you were in consulting, you're living a pretty high part of life. Um, but you pivoted. What happened? And what did you
When I,
pivot to?
oh yeah, oh my gosh. I love that time of my life. I love my entire life, but looking back, that time of my life was so fun. My wife Dottie and she's a banker, by the way, and has been in banking for many, many years. So at the time, this was about, oh gosh, 2004. I had already been in the industrial health and safety industry for about 9 years. I was a health and safety consultant. I ran a territory. I was one of the top dogs in the company, and very successful. It's a very technical modality. I mean, there's a lot to know, and I was just getting burned out. And about a year before I made, not even quite a year, actually, about 6, 8 months before that, before I started really getting this feeling like I've got to get out of this industry. It's just killing me. My
Hmm.
wife and I were trying to have children for about 2, 3 years, and she was having some fertility issues and some medical problems. And actually I'm writing about this in my book today, as a matter of fact. So this is really fresh in my mind. And I remember in September of 2003, her OB said, "Hey, you guys should go see this fertility expert." And we did. We went and saw her, and she told us, "You guys have 10% chance of having children." And by this point, I'm so burned out with work, and now we have this thing happening, and I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, like how am I going to deal with this?" And then so's Dottie. Like it was a pity party all the way around, right? Oh my God, we can't
Mhm.
have kids, blah 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 blah. And about a couple hours later, we both prayed on it. We talked about it, and we said we're gonna have a really fun summer, and let's just relax and forget about all the stuff and all the noise and all the stresses of work. And so we got through summer, and 2 weeks after Labor Day, about mid September, we learned she was pregnant. And two
Might
weeks
be a
after that,
hint
we had
there.
twins. Yeah,
Right.
there's a little bit more to this than that. I'm
Yeah,
being
I'm
very
sure.
cautious of
I'm
our
sure.
time. So
But there might be something there.
so fast forward, she's pregnant. She's dealing with a pregnancy well. She and I are in our 30s at this point, so it's a little bit more of a high risk pregnancy. And we got into the babies coming in April in 2004, and when they were delivered, it was the biggest moment of our lives. I have to tell you, there is no other moment in my life that it could top it. I was in the delivery room with Dottie, and the babies are coming, and it was the most amazing experience ever. And if for any of you in the audience listening and you haven't had children yet, or you have children, you know what I'm talking about. This is the pinnacle of everything you worked so hard for. And it was at that moment in time where I made some big decisions, and I decided I'm not dealing with the stress anymore. I've always wanted to be out on my own as an entrepreneur. I'm going out on my own, and I had an opportunity, and I seized it. And several months later, I did it. I just took off and did it. And I was on the road all the time. And being on the road like I was taxing. You get 2 new babies at home. We're learning to be parents. My wife's working full time as an operations manager for a large regional bank. I'm on the road every day except for the weekends. And we would swap. She would be on care duty while I'm gone. We'd had a nanny in, and then when I came home on the weekends, I was literally pulling a Friday through Sunday all nighters, taking care of the twins in their infancy, and then I was on a plane Monday morning and off we went. This was a crazy schedule we had. And we sustained that for several months until about December of, well, actually right after Thanksgiving 2004, when our daughter was really, really sick. We were in Montana at her parents' ranch. I was hunting, taking some time off. The baby and Dottie and the babies were with us for Thanksgiving. And it what turned from, well, what we thought was just an illness ended up becoming a leukemia diagnosis. And so several days later, we were back in Spokane at the hospital and received the diagnosis, and it was devastating. Like, wow, we've been through so much as a couple, So much has gone into our careers. We've done so much to get ourselves to this point. And now this? What? Why? Why God? Why? Why us? Like we worked our tails off to get here. And you bless us with these two little babies, these wonderful gifts, and now this. And of course, this leukemia came with a 50% survival rate, and it was devastating. And but after we processed that after a couple of days, now the real questions had to be answered. Like, okay, this is our new reality. We have no choice around it. We can either wallow in our shit, pardon my French, but that's just how we felt. And we can feel sorry for ourselves and act like so many people do, or we can take this moment as an opportunity to realign ourselves to what's really important. And knowing career was really the most important thing before the kids came. It still was when the kids came. If you're catching on to that, career, it was career,
I did
family.
catch on to that. Yeah, I was waiting for your punchline.
Yeah. And so with career family, there was a realignment. It had to be family career or family and all the other things, right? God, family, and all the other priorities. And but here's the clincher. And again, I'm a man of faith. I won't bring a lot of that in today, but I just telling you, like that's really supported me with everything I've ever done in my life.
Yep.
In this one, in this situation, especially. And sometimes God will speak to you in ways you have no idea, and He just puts it there in front of you, and you have to make a decision or choose. And in that moment, what we realized was because I was self-employed, I was also the bread. I don't want to say breadwinner, but I was making more money than Dottie, and I had incredible opportunities in front of me. And so it would have been really easy for me, John, to just say, you know what, Dot. And it was her dream to be a stay-home mom. We wanted to fulfill that, but I didn't have any health insurance. I'm self-employed. We
Yeah.
were going off her corporate plan, which was a Cadillac plan. It was amazing. But question then became, do I stay on the road and continue earning, which would be easy for me, or and then have Dottie come home because one of us had to be in the hospital, one of us had to be home with the other baby. We had two babies. You couldn't have both in the hospital, and we couldn't have both at home. Obviously, one needed to be in the hospital, one needed to be home. So there was a logistical issue there for us. And then the insurance issue, and she carried the insurance, I did not. And so we made a logistical decision in the moment that we had no choice around, and that was I came off the road. I moved into the hospital with Jenna for 7 months of treatment, and Dottie continued to work so she could provide the health insurance. And so I became a stay-home dad immediately, and it wasn't an easy decision. In fact, I will tell you, to be perfectly um, transparent, I didn't want to do it. Dottie wanted to do it. It was a logistical thing. But it wasn't until after she got out of the hospital 7 months later, which by the way she did. She survived cancer, and God bless. I mean, she's a walking, talking miracle today. She's 22 years old in a couple weeks, and or next week. My goodness, next week.
That is amazing.
And graduating from University of Idaho with a bachelor's degree in criminology next month, and we feel absolutely blessed. It wasn't until after she got out of the hospital that the second series of decisions needed to be made. Do I continue to be a stay-home dad? Do I not? And we made the decision that I would continue to do so. And I was starting to fall in love with the role. I was starting to see that this was my way of leading the family and leading us through this really, really intense situation. Because listen, it was, I can tell you one last thing is everything after that experience was equally as intensive as being in the hospital watching her go through chemotherapy and all the treatment. It was a really tough time, and it was an experience I don't wish upon any other human being, um, because of the financial stress, the emotional stress. We went from uh, really high on the hog and doing really well financially, almost completely debt free. Thank God before this occurred, with all these incredible opportunities hitting us and these investments and this business idea and this business adventure starting and this and this and that. To wham, here's your new reality,
Okay.
and realign.
Okay.
Yep.
So far you have been forced into your decisions
Yes.
with the blessings,
Yes.
and you followed and you followed the path.
I did follow the path,
Hmm.
and I realized sometime within that second year of being in this role that this was what was meant for me. This is what I need to accept the fact that this is where I am meant to be, that I am this is the person that I was built to be. And yet through those next couple of years, it still stressed me that I was not being on the road or I wasn't providing for the family. Like I was falling into the trap that most men do, that this is the way I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be the breadwinner. I'm supposed to be the guy who's out there providing for the whole family.
You're
That
the
was all
hunter. You're the hunter.
hunter gatherer. I'm the warrior. I'm the tough guy,
Yep.
right? And I look in it, put a lot of stress in our marriage. It just did. It is an enormous amount of stress to the point where we had to make some other decisions. Like it got so bad in our house that I remember in 2006, it was a fall morning. We were having a cup of coffee. Things it was like the weekend morning. I think it was Saturday. It was sunny. The curtains were blowing. It was just picturesque. It was wonderful. And we actually were talking. We were actually having coffee and having a nice visit, which we never did. We were just too busy in our own worlds.
Hmm.
And the babies are in the living room playing and just set up beautifully and having a great time giggling. And then what went from a coffee turned into this crazy argument that then turned into the fight of the century. And this fight literally went on for hours. And I was not willing to relent. She wasn't willing to relent. Neither one of us were willing to compromise or create agreement. We were in our stuff deeply, and it was at the end of that argument where she said, "I'm done. I'm calling a lawyer, and we're going to get a divorce.
Whoa.
It's all done, and get the hell out."
Whoa.
And so I had my tail between my legs, left the room, slammed the door behind me. And as you can imagine, John, you've been married for 40 years. There are those times in our marriages where we have some energy, right? Where there's exchange of things you regret saying, opinions, which can trigger people. And for whatever reason, we got triggered. We had our fight, and that was the result. I sat downstairs at my kitchen bar, watching my twins playing, seeing the joy they had, knowing the miracle it was for our daughter to survive, knowing all the things we had overcome. And I sat there in my stuff, struggling to figure out how I was going to turn this around. I will tell you, my first instinct was to just acquiesce and let her have what she wanted, because that's what men do. We want to please our wives, we want to please our partners, and even if it means a divorce, if that's what's going to make them happy, then let's do that. Part of me really struggled with that. And in that particular situation, in that moment, I made a bold decision. And the bold decision was to really, first of all, appreciate that being in this role as a stay-home dad, as the leader of my family, as CEO of Price Incorporated, was a gift. Number two, that we had gone through too much to allow this to happen, and that it was my time to take a stand, not only for the marriage and our family, but for myself. Right? Like it was like I hadn't really taken that stand for a couple of years, and so I after a couple of hours, I came upstairs and I said to Dottie, I said, "Look, I first of all, I really apologize for what has occurred. I apologize that we had this fight. And for me, apologizing was just absolutely a no-no. I never did it. It just wasn't baked into my DNA. That I felt compelled to say it, not for the sake of saying it, but I felt a heartfelt, I have to share this with you. That I really apologize that we had this argument, that this occurred. And here's the deal. I will never sign those divorce papers. I love you way too much to divorce you. And I can own from over here that there's something that we need to work on. And I don't know what that is, but let's take on some marriage counseling. Let's go back to church. Let's talk to our pastor, our priest at the time, and let's work on it. And she looked at me and she said, with this, she stopped crying and she looked at me and said, "You know what? You're the nice." She didn't say that actually. This is another story later. She said, "You are such an a-hole, and okay, let's do it." Let's work on the marriage. I think that we will give this another shot. And we did. And we worked on it for several years. The whole point of sharing that whole story is that what came over me was I have to fight for what I want. I can't fight with her any longer. I have, or and fight in a way where we're creating all this conflict because there was zero connection. That was the whole basis of this entire problem. We had zero connection and a lot of competing agendas, right? And it was creating this disconnect. And I was signaling to her at almost every point in our relationship that I only wanted to fight with her. And what I shared with her that day was I wanted to fight for her. I wanted to fight for us. I wanted to fight for our relationship and our marriage and our family. And it changed my life forever. And I didn't see that until years later. But sometimes these things happen and you have no clue as to why until they've happened and you see it years later.
Well,
So,
when you're in the middle of it, one of the things that you talked about was energy, right? You guys had really bad energy going on during your fight. And the thing that flashed on me is that marriage is about energy, right? Relationships are about energy. As extreme as good energy happens, so do the extremes on bad energy,
yeah, no
right?
kidding. Oh,
And
yeah.
I mean, I've been married for 40 years and I just came up with that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, the good energy, well, we don't need to go into that, but it's really good, right? But when the bad energy happens, it's really bad. You take the good with the bad and you deal with it. Okay, that's what I have to say about that.
I love it.
The other interesting thing I'll say is that, when you got to that point and you said you decided for the first time you were going to take a stand, you know, that can be positive as it was in your case, or it could be negative, right?
Really.
Because I've heard guys say, "I'm taking a stand, damn it," right?
Yeah.
I mean, your stand was, yeah, there's a damn it in there, but I'm going to fight for what's right. I want for what's right for me, for what's right for my family. And
For her
yeah, your wife, what's that?
and fighting for her, not with her.
And fighting for her, not with her. Exactly. That's beautiful. That's beautiful, right? And the bottom line is you took ownership. You took ownership. And that's when he said the moment you choose ownership, everything shifts,
Yep.
right?
And I didn't see it in the moment.
Yeah.
I saw it years later.
And so yeah, but let's talk about that. Let's talk about presence and ownership.
Yeah, sure.
What do you want? What have you learned and experienced, and what do you want to? What would you like to share with my audience?
Yeah. Well, first of all, look, I think, John, it's really important to distinguish the audience what that actually means, right? I mean, a lot of people hear the words ownership. I think it's Jocko Willink that has the book Extreme Ownership, and he's fantastic, and he has a great message. And I think there are several other gurus like Tony Robbins and on it goes that talk. And Gary John Bishop, who wrote the book on F Yourself. And so there are a lot of different gurus that talk about ownership, but really at the end of the day, ownership really means to be extremely responsible for yourself, your words, your presence, your being, and how it impacts everything around you. That's my distinction. That's my description. And when you can really look at that as not just something you do, but an actual way you show up in the world, and not just on any given, like not just randomly, but every single day, every single moment. You own every decision you make. You own every choice you make. You own every single emotion, good or bad. You own every dollar you spend or you earn. You own your relationships with the people that you love, even the relationships of the people you don't love. Let me say that one more time: that you own even the relationships with the people you don't love,
Totally,
right?
totally.
And when you can really get to a place as a human being where you have the kind of relationship with yourself that says, I unabashedly own my stuff, and it's on loudspeaker all the time, and it's there clearly visible for people to see, something really magical happens. You then can have presence with people that, unlike anything you've ever had, you develop a sense of trust with them because they know your state of being is always going to be someone who owns, whether they're in a good mood, a bad mood, whether they said something funny or stupid, whether they did this or did that, or didn't do this or didn't do that. They will always be that person who takes extreme responsibility for that piece of who they are. And then the third part of that is, as a dad, I always felt, man, how what a gift I'm going to provide for my kids if I model that, if I show them how that actually works. Not tell them, not beat it into them, not teach them in some academic way, but actually model it.
Live
And
it.
then when it, right, and then when it
Live
comes
it.
to clients, that's definitely something that's always been at the heart and center of my work with my clients. And to be really blunt, I've lost some clients because of that, because they
Oh, no
look at
doubt.
that,
Yeah,
oh,
that
right, because
happens.
they butt up against their stuff and they're not willing to own that they won't own anything. It's the
Yeah.
irony of it.
Yeah.
So I could share a lot of practical stories around that, but I already shared one. Obviously, the experience of being someone in ownership is a process, and it takes time to learn how to be that way.
Yeah. And I
And
want to, I want to just comment on something. The opposite, one of the opposites of owning and taking ownership is blaming, right? And I look, the whole world, the world that we live in has somehow become a really, really big world of entitlement, right? And instant gratification and all those different kinds of things. And there's a big part of it that I've seen of blame. I wrote a book. I wrote a book about the Japanese American concentration camps during World War II, about these guys who were thrown into these camps. And instead of blaming the world for their problems and being thrown into these camps, they joined the United States Army to fight and die for the government that put them and their families in those camps to begin with. And this group of guys went on to become a segregated Japanese American war unit called the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. And that unit became the most decorated war unit in the history of the United States Army for its size and duration. And a big number of these guys came out of camps. So these guys didn't view themselves as victims. They decided to do something about it. They decided to take ownership, right? And they went on to become legend. They went on to and after the war was over, I mean they made the world better. They made the world better. And so, one of the things I mean, think about to my audience, think about what the opposite of ownership is and ask yourself what you're doing. Because, if you're blaming other people, every relationship has at least two people involved, or could be your dog, whatever, right? It's a relationship. Choose. Choose if you want to own it or not. Because you know what? I, I believe, and maybe I'm wrong, Brian, but I believe that the vast majority of relationships could be
oh,
saved and made beautiful if,
gosh,
right?
no question.
If
Yeah.
one person took ownership of it and said, you know what? I don't want to let you go. I don't want to break up. I want to make this thing work. Because the fact of the matter is, if you can't make this one work, you probably won't make the next one work either.
Yep. I have a couple uncles that have been married two, three, some,
Right.
tons,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah. But that
seriously,
ownership is hugely important.
it's massively important. And I love your analogy. Remember when we were first engaging and talking through email about connecting for this interview? When I learned about your book, which by the way, I want to read. I love World War II. It's one of my favorite times in history. same with my wife, who's actually a historian out of college. So when I look at your analogy and compare it to today, I don't know that too many people today would have the same values that those men did, that could say to themselves, "Oh my gosh, to my captors, I say I'm joining you instead of condemning you." Like that's what I heard, and I
Yep.
heard that not
Yep.
only did that based on ownership, they did that based on values, they did that based on a world value, a shared world belief or world or value. I don't know, how to explain it. It just sounds to me like a time that this world existed where people did something extraordinary, and they put themselves aside for a minute to say, I want to contribute to the greater good. We don't do that anymore. At least we haven't. We do see pockets of it. We see war hero stories from all of our wars that we've had since. We do talk about the extraordinary person, like that principal just a couple of weeks ago that stopped that shooter from coming to his high
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
Like,
Took down the shooter.
like
Holy
how
cow.
extraordinary is that?
Yep.
But you don't hear about it. I know these stories happen, but we don't hear about it anymore, and that's another conversation for another day. What I do want to say though about your comment is this: it all starts with your relationship with yourself.
Yes.
And a person cannot take a stand or say, I want to fight for you instead of with you, or I'm going to go to war because it's the right thing to do. And by the way, I know you hurt me. I know you government, you audited me and you bankrupted me and you did all these things and da 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 da, but I'm still going to war because I believe in the greater good of our society, or I'm going to join the services as a result. I mean, we don't do that much anymore because we have a crappy relationship with ourselves. We're not really
Mm.
clear what we are living for. We're not clear on our values. We're not clear on our goals, our vision. And so I think what it comes down to is a lot of that is that people aren't clear on who they are. They're not clear on the relationship they have with themselves. And as a result of not being clear about their relationship with themselves, they do become victims. Yeah, you put me in you put me in this internment camp, and you know what? I'm a victim of that. No, that's not what happened. They became the most decorated war unit during World War II. They didn't sit there and say, "Oh my God, I can't do it because you people did this to me. I'm not going to give you anything. You already took everything. I'm
Now,
not giving
here's
you
the
anything."
thing. Here's the thing about that. There were people who did.
Oh, I'm
There
sure
were,
there were.
right? I mean, there were people who did. And so even in that particular example that we just talked about, it's your choice. It's your
Right.
choice.
Thank you.
And you choose. You choose whether you want to be the champion, whether you want to be the victim. You choose whether you want to own it or blame it.
That's right.
Right? In the example of what you and Dottie went through, right? Easily you could have said, Dottie, you are so screwed up, right? I mean, you're just not getting it. I mean, I'm out. I mean, how often does that happen, Brian?
Not in
Right?
this house.
Right? No, but you know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, all the time.
All the
Every
time, more often
day.
than not,
That's right.
right? Or according to the statistics, 50% of the time at least, right?
Well, yeah, and 69% of women, or 69% of the divorces that are started are from women. I'm not putting that statistic right, so I apologize for that. But in all my statistical research that I've done just to support some of my points in my book, that number blew my mind. That 69% of divorces are initiated by women. There it is. That's the clean version of it. And I think though, to your point, absolutely, I wasn't getting there, and thank you for bringing it in. But I'm a huge proponent of choice. Whether you whether you choose to be a victim or choose to not be a victim, it's still a choice, and it's a powerful choice. Either way, it's a powerful
Hugely
choice.
powerful choice.
And my brother David, who's a year younger than me, um, shared with me just a few days ago his experience of people gaslighting. He called me and he said, "Hey, Bry, could you have a couple of minutes?" I said, "Yeah, I do." And he said, "Oh my God, like this person was gaslighting me. They were," and he's a contractor up in northern Alberta, and he's working with this client who who wasn't owning something that they were doing and what he was dealing with, and the subcontractors were, and it's just a big mess, right? You can just use your imagination to figure this all out. Without going into the details of that, he said, "Yeah, and I want to talk to you because I am so sick and tired of people gaslighting me." And I asked him, "Please define for me what you mean by gaslighting."
Hmm.
Not owning their stuff, deflecting, diverting, sitting there telling me that certain things or conversations never happened when they did, and I have documentation of it. And he said, "That drives me nuts." So he said, "What is it that really drives you nuts about that?" Like, I'm not taking the other person's side. I just want him to help him create some clarity around it. Like, what's the energy really all about? He said, "It's the lack of integrity."
Mm.
It's
Mm.
beautiful. So, what do you want to do with that? Like, as your brother, I could sit here and tell you what it's all about and what's happening for you, but I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have, some ability to get in your head. So, what do you want to do with that? And if it bothers you that much, what's the next step? And he said, "Brian, I don't want to deal with people that have a lack of integrity." Okay, what does that look like in real practice? You only have two choices here, buddy. You can either choose to be with it and continue to work with this person and just like get through it, or you can have a real conversation with them about it.
And fire them.
Boom.
Yeah. No, that's right.
That's
Yeah.
right. And in a real, so to tie it all back to my original story, in a real sense, that's what I was doing with my wife. I was gaslighting her. I wasn't owning my shit. I wasn't telling her truthfully, transparently what was actually happening. I wasn't vulnerable. I was hiding my feelings, my thoughts. I was not owning my new role in our marriage. I was lacking integrity. I was choosing to be a victim to our circumstances, and I wasn't taking ownership. And in contrast, the minute you take the ownership, you can go from victim to hero. You can become that person who has integrity again, and it happens really fast, like in a
You can
flash.
choose, you can make that choice in the snap of a finger, right? You can
That's
say,
right.
yeah.
It will shift a relationship immediately. But here's the bigger point: it will also start shifting your relationship with yourself because you start realizing, wow, that was way more powerful. Like, that actually yielded some pretty amazing things.
And it actually made me feel pretty good.
Right. Like, go figure. Go figure. In a time in our lives, in an era where everyone's looking for a feel good, I can't think of a more organic way to feel good than to know that you're that person that people reliably can count on to have integrity, not gaslight, but actually someone who thrives in their life and their relationships and their relationship with themselves instead of surviving it all, which is, I know it's a little cliche now to go from thrival to survival, but it's still something that's part of my DNA. And I look at that and I think about some of the some of the most powerful men, and I'm not picking on women right now. I just want to pick on men, if that's okay.
Hmm.
But some of the most powerful men in the world, they get up into a microphone and start jibber jabbering with us about all the things we should believe and all the things they believe and all the things that people are doing wrong. All the people around them are doing things wrong, and they don't own any of the stuff that they're doing. And these could be the most powerful CEOs, the most powerful politicians, the most powerful people in our world. And then the next day, they're on the news having done something so horrific to somebody else that we can't, we're in disbelief. And these are the same people that are telling us that this is the way our lives need to run. This is the way we need to think
Yeah.
about our lives. And what I think I'm up to more than anything else in writing my book is that it's really not a book about marriage, although that's the context I'm using and my story. It's really a self leadership book, through the lens of marriage, um, and from there that you can change everything if you just lead yourself first.
Self-leadership book. I love that. You know, I was thinking about, sorry about bringing in movies and stuff like that, but Kevin
Oh no, don't
Costner,
apologize.
yeah,
I'm a big
Kevin
movie guy.
Costner was in a movie called The Guardian, and it was with him being this big OG in the Coast Guard, right? A rescue swimmer and stuff like that.
Oh, I love that movie.
At the end of the movie, and by the way, if you haven't seen the movie yet, you're not gonna watch it, so I'm just gonna tell you what part of what happened. At the end of the movie, he goes to his ex-wife, and he says that he's I think he was retiring or something like that. And he told her a story about one of his hardest rescues was when a man and his wife were drowning, and he was trying to rescue them, and they were in the water. And the man kept pushing his wife down because he was trying to survive, and but he was drowning her. He was, you know, and and he said to his ex-wife, he says, and I just came to realize that that man was me, and that he was drowning her. And I just thought to myself, wow, you know, um, um, and I don't know why I thought of that, but it's um, you choose, and in the toughest times you choose, and set aside The Guardian and Kevin Costner, but
It's a great
um,
movie, by the way. I saw the movie. I
yeah,
remember it
yeah,
well.
great movie. And Ashton Kutcher was in it, or I think that's the last name. Anyway, um, and so going back to the whole choose thing, when you're in that moment, when you're in that heat of the moment, it's really important not only to choose with your brain, but bring your heart into the conversation.
Yeah.
Bring your heart into the conversation. We just get so triggered by what's going on up here. Take a moment and ask yourself what's going on in here, right? Because that's a big, big part of your choice moving forward.
Oh, it's a massive part of your choice. And I could comment on that if you like, but if you have a question in there,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
can
No,
answer
go
it.
for
So,
it.
well, I years ago, when I went through my coach training, which was in 2014, I did that in Seattle and I did that over 2 years. My first year was just the training to become a coach, and it was very intensive. And my second year, I returned to that program, which is an International Coach Federation accredited program. And it was very intense, very intense. And the second year, I came back as a mentor coach, which meant I was honing in the skill set, and I was part of the leadership team. And our master certified coach that was leading our whole program pulled me aside one day, and she looked at me and she said, "Man," and part of my French, I'm just going to throw it out there if that's okay. She said, "Brian, you have this really fucked up relationship with integrity." Oy, oy, oy. What do you do with that? Right? And she started talking to me about what she was seeing. And as a coach, said, "Would you be open to some coaching around that?" And not right now, but in front of the room. And this is what we did, John. This was a group of other coaches, like maybe in our case, I think we had 13 or 14 coaches, some returning, some that had been in the program for 2 or 3 years, some junior leadership, some that were a little higher in the leadership hierarchy that were also working on their credentials with the ICF. And the whole idea was you get coached in front of the room because everybody learns from that coaching and everybody
Mhm.
gets something out of it. It's far more powerful actually to be the person watching the coaching than the person getting the coaching.
Right.
I when she shared that with me, I felt compelled to say yes. So I said yes. And the first thing she said to me was through the coaching, or the question she asked was, "Brian, you seem to always be in survival mode. And I'm curious what would happen if you were not in survival mode," and something to that effect. and and so of course immediately as a man, what's the first thing that you do when you're when you're pressured or you're put against a wall with something so vulnerable, or at least something so not triggering, but it was a powerful expression by her as to something she was seeing that I was not, and that's the beauty of coaching. And she was reflecting it and I wasn't having it, and I didn't know how to answer it. And so I made up some bullshit answer. She said, "Yep, you're in your head. Yep. Now what are you going to do with that? Because it's not working for you anymore. We're on to you. Like all of us are on to you. We know who you are when you're in your head or when you're in your heart." And so we started working on that distinction. And she started sharing with me, teaching me that when you're really practiced at being vulnerable, which is really hard for a man, by the way, men are not taught to be like that.
Hmm.
But when you get really practiced at being vulnerable, you get into this thing we call the heart. And the heart is there to help you see vision and share from a place that is not just heartfelt, but it's love and it's joy and it's ownership, huge ownership part to that. And it has you being in integrity. But when you're in your head, you're surviving that moment. You're choosing to survive that moment. You're making excuses, you're gaslighting, you're deflecting, you're unwilling to be in the moment and be present. You're thinking about other things that feel good. And it's very much a feel good part of who we are. Our head runs our feel good center.
And our
And
survival center.
it absolutely. And so she's making this distinction with me, and we're doing it real time through Q&A and me diving deeply into my stuff. And when we were all done, she pulled me aside and said, Brian, I just want to tell you that was very, very powerful. And I want to thank you for being so courageous and for being willing to play. That was our terminology. We'll be willing to
Mhm.
play. And what she was teaching me and the rest of us was that life is really just that. It's about playing, and it's about being playful, and it's about really appreciating that you have that, like as you coined it so brilliantly, you have a choice in the moment to show up either here or here. You can choose one of these two places, but you're going to come from either your head or your heart. And the the one you choose is going to determine what happens next. So if you lose that big business deal, or you're in the boardroom and a board member quits because of something you said, it's probably because you weren't leading from your heart. You're probably leading from your head. Not always, by the way. There are some instances where that stuff happens still from your heart, but that's more or less an alignment issue than it is something you may or may not have said necessarily. And that could be, like we could get into a rabbit hole with that too. But I think you kind of follow where I'm going with that. Bottom line is, head heart distinction really is incredibly important, and something not only I've coached a lot around, but I'm writing in my book as a framework for people, especially men, to be able to start seeing that in their own self leadership, when they are really clear that, and start asking themselves in the moment, am I in my head or in my heart? Like if I'm in this interview with John Suzuki, am I in my head or my heart? Well, if I was in my head, this would be a crappy interview, I'll just say. Right.
I pull you out of it.
Right. Yeah, you probably would, but
I
you know,
would.
it'd be crappy. And you'd be going, oh my God, this guy's inauthentic. He's not really sharing. He's there, like his experiences suck. He's trying to teach. He's trying to tell. He's trying to, trying to convince my audience of this. But when you're in your heart, you become a man or a person, let's just say for the sake of our entire audience, you become a person in integrity in so many ways. You become a person who is authentic, that people want to hear, and you're not afraid to share those experiences that are deep and personal, because they can impact other people in a very profound way. And I'll tell you, just as a side note, John, I have put myself out there bigger than I ever thought I would the last 2 years. And I've done it because I made the decision that I don't have a right. Now, here are the choice of words I'm using. I, Brian Price, do not have a right to hold back my knowledge and my experiences from the world, because there's somebody out there that needs what I have and can benefit from that in some powerful way. I believe that. And like
Well,
we said earlier, if it's just one person, I win, they win.
and that's a perfect way to close this episode because it's all about sharing. It's all about sharing experiences. I believe we live in three phases of life. The first is to learn and go to school. The second is to earn and make a living, and the third is to return and give back. And that's a big part of this podcast, right? Is sharing from your heart because as we said earlier before we started, if my audience can get one great idea out of having spent 45 minutes or an hour with us, could be a life changer. And I'll tell you, we talked about a lot of things in this conversation. Um, a lead, uh, uh, what did you call it? Self-lead,
Self
self-leadership,
leadership. Yeah.
right? It starts with you. And, head, heart, and choose. Choose with your head and choose with your heart. But just make sure you're considering your heart in your choices, right? And the last thing I'll say is that, one of my favorite songs in ever is the late great Whitney Houston's Greatest Love of All. Learning to love yourself. It is the greatest love of all, and it's the hardest love of all because we carry so much stuff, right? We carry so much stuff, and so Brian, what do you want? What do you want? My close us out. What do you want to leave with the audience?
Woo, that's a big one. Oh my gosh. I don't know that I can top what you just shared.
Yeah,
Um,
give the gift.
yeah, the gift is for all of you out there. First of all, thank you for taking this time. I know time is very precious for all of us, and I'd just like to say that when you really, really appreciate the gift that you're providing your entire family and your business and your partners and your work and the boardroom and all the things that you're up to, when you really give all those people the gift of being authentically you through your self leadership, through doing the work on the relationship with yourself, um, and really getting clear about your head, heart, and like John said, those incredible choices that you have in front of you. Consider there is no right or wrong. It's just in front of you, and your life is going to be spectacular. And we haven't even gotten into alignment a whole lot today. We haven't even talked about visioning, and we haven't talked about um, partnership with your spouse or the other people that are important to you in your life. So here's what I would say, just to close this out really powerfully: don't fight with her, fight for her, and everything you are, everything you have done in your life is a choice.
Yeah. Holy cow. What a great way to close. Fight for her, not with her, and your life is your choice.
Yeah.
Brian, I have been saying that forever, right? And the way that I tell people, I say it is that, the life that you're living is a product of the choices that you've made in your life up
Right.
until now. And people will say, well, I couldn't choose my parents. Okay, so we agree with this, that the product of your life in the future is going to be dependent on the choices you make from here on out. And nobody disagrees with that statement, right? And
No.
so, yeah, choose. Brian, this has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. And if people want to reach out to you, if people want to get to know a little bit more about you, your book isn't out there yet. How do they connect with you?
Oh, this is a great question. So here's the best way to get a hold of me if somebody would like to contact me or DM me or just have a conversation would be to go to LinkedIn. I'm currently building a brand new website, so I'm reluctant to give that
Okay.
website address just yet. It'll be done in the next 3 4 weeks. So we could do that, but we haven't cleared up exactly what URL we're going to use. So I would say go to LinkedIn and find Brian M. Price.
Brian
And
M. as in Michael Price.
correct. So linkedin.in/Brian M. Price. And then there's also my landing page for my Extraordinary Husband Framework, which is www.extraordinaryhusband.com. More on that later, but that's a nice landing page. We'll share with people a little bit more about my philosophy, and we'll take them through a nurturing sequence, and then I can DM them and get a hold of them from there.
Wonderful.
And people can also reach me through my email. I'm all in if they like to email me at Brian Price at ignitionacademy.com. That's my mothership company name, so that's why I use that.
Brian Price at ignitionacademy.com.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
So
Cool.
so yeah, and then watch for me. I'm going. I was just invited to speak on the Mind Valley stage in Estonia in the summertime. So I'll be on at Mind Valley University speaking on this topic and all the other things coming. So lots of media stuff in the works, and
All right.
I look forward to
Okay.
meeting with people. Yeah,
All right. Folks,
awesome.
thank you for joining us. I'm not going to wrap this up again. Brian, thank you for joining me. I love you. God bless you. And everybody out there, thanks again. Please share this. There's folks out there that need to hear what Brian has to say. I love you. God bless you. See you next time. Bye.